So the topic of the sorry, hang on a second. So the topic about the effectiveness of addressable television has obviously come up a few times during these couple of days here, and is also something that we face pretty much on a day-to-day basis when we deal with advertisers and agencies. I must say though that it's very often the people at the agencies or the people on the client side who haven't really grown up with television, because when you talk to people who know television, know the effectiveness of television, they actually very rarely question the effectiveness of addressable television. What we've done here is actually to look into the numbers in terms of really what drives the effectiveness of addressable television, and also to try to compare that to some of the other video platforms that we very often get compared to. And then taking that one step further, what is really the reason why addressable television performs so well? So some of that obviously speaks about the quality of the platform. A lot of that is also the legacy and what comes from coming from a TV platform, basically. So our starting point was this slide that you've probably seen before. This is from the profitability study that was done by ThinkBox. Those who were here yesterday saw a more updated version, but it actually kind of shows the same thing here. When you look at the performance of TV on a return on investment, it's pretty much a solid investment. I mean, when you put money into television, you're going to get a positive return on investment back. In particular, when you obviously take into account the long-term implications of this. The risk is not very great for doing that. When you look at the one that's labeled online video, it's really a mixed bag up here. Sometimes it performs actually better than television, but very often you're also going to face the risk that this is not going to give the same return of investment as television does. We think part of that explanation lies in the fact that this is really a bundle of everything that could be labeled as digital video. So within this bucket, you're going to find both YouTube, you're going to find Facebook video, you're also going to find broadcaster video on demand. That was the one that, in the version that ThinkBox showed yesterday, they kind of separated that one, and it performed really well. And this is what we wanted to look into, because we think there's a massive difference in terms of these different video platforms, and to understand what drives that difference in terms of performance. Some of the stuff that we have access to, and this is why we wanted to look into it, is looking across these different platforms here, there's a difference in the completion rate. Not all these video formats actually watch to the end of that video ad, and obviously we think that that is important. We also wanted the company that looked into the data on our behalf to look into things like viewability. So is the ad actually being seen on the screen? And then the last one, which is often something that we get thrown at us whenever we talk about doing any kind of comparison between addressable TV and Facebook or YouTube, it's does the platform matter? Because very often Facebook is going to say the natural state of watching any video on Facebook is going to be on a mobile phone. So if you're going to try and measure that, or if you're going to try to look into the numbers based on the performance from a desktop or from a TV screen, it's not going to be the same thing. You're not going to be able to compare it. So we looked into the device type as well. Interestingly enough, obviously, for us, is also the notion that we were able to break these out and look at the performance of these three platforms individually. So we got the numbers, and I'm going to show that in a second here, for both Facebook video, for YouTube video ads, and then for addressable television. And I think it's probably important to understand when we talk about TV2 Play, that is our addressable TV offering in the Danish market. The way this works, it's an OTT platform. So obviously this includes both access to video on demand content, but it also includes access to live channels. And we actually have advertising both in front of the video on demand content, but we also do ad replacement. So we put targeted ads into the linear feed, and we bundle both of those together and call that addressable television. So we try to kind of minimize tech jargon and tech talk as much as possible, and as opposed to talking about, okay, this is video on demand, this is something else, this is addressable television. This is targeted advertising. Most of the consumption on this platform actually takes place on a big TV screen as well. So we're talking about the big TV set in the house, and it kind of makes sense because most of our content is made for television. So you can still watch this on a mobile phone if you want to, and people do that, but very often it's because they don't really have access to a big TV screen. So the way we decided to look into this, and we work with GroupM actually analyzing the data from their clients, but also using the analytic capabilities of that company, is to use econometric modeling. We were looking at the effect in terms of impact on return on investment. And obviously, they had the capability of going through all the existing campaigns for the past year, and then they would be able to take out these kind of metrics that we were kind of hoping that would give us a better answer and potentially allow them to also build a better model in terms of coming up with, so what really impacts the effectiveness of these different video platforms. So without further ado, and the reason why I'm standing here presenting this, it's obviously that addressable television performs really, really well. The size of the bubble represents the investment that was being made on these campaigns that we tracked. And it means that addressable television performs with a return on investment of about 4.4. Facebook video performs the worst in this comparison. And we still have this kind of general video, which is kind of the reduced sum of anything that couldn't really be classified as either Facebook, YouTube, or addressable TV. So that's now the new kind of bucket of mixed goods. When looking into these kind of variables and trying to see which one actually meant the most in terms of effectiveness, there's a very clear correlation actually between, in particular, completion rate and the return on investment. So if you're looking for one key metric that's going to say anything about the effectiveness of a video platform, it's going to be completion rate. It's not necessarily going to be linked to the platform you're going to be watching it on. It's not going to be linked to how many pixels you're going to see. I think that will probably play into at some point as well. But it's really going to be all about the completion rate. So please keep that one in mind. One thing that's obviously in our favor is that when we talk about addressable television and we look into completion rate specifically, we have a completion rate of about 99%. You don't have the option of skipping the ads. And also, I mean, we've been serving ads on traditional linear TV for about 30 years in the Danish market. So the customers, they know that they're going to get advertising. They expect to see advertising. And one thing that we actually built into this offering that we have here is, well, if people don't like advertising, they do have some options of actually paying a bit extra and skipping the ads. So those who see ads, it's kind of a pretty fair kind of value exchange here. I wouldn't say they appreciate advertising. I don't think a lot of people would actually say that if you ask them, but we made a good deal with them. They know that they're getting advertising and they're going to watch all of it. The one that obviously sticks out is Facebook, and I don't think that platform has ever been known for anyone spending a lot of time watching ads. And it's also very obvious here that, well, only 5% actually completed the ad here, which kind of makes you wonder how much as an advertiser would you actually be able to tell in such a short time. Well, there are other things you can use Facebook and YouTube for, but if you're trying to do a comparison as a video platform to drive brand, to drive emotion, there's definitely a very clear difference here. One thing is also this notion that, well, television is something different, and this is what we built addressable TV on the back of. People are paying attention to the screen. I'll have a piece of research here from another piece of work that we did, which also shows that, well, it's because it's more engaging. People spend more time watching it, but they also spend more time engaging with it. And yes, you can find engagement on other platforms. What we found here, because we also applied eye tracking, so we kind of knew what people were looking, after 2 seconds, what everybody was basically looking at on a YouTube video was, where's the damn skip button? Because that's really what they cared about. And again, I don't know if that makes for an ideal kind of platform, even though that you get to see 6 seconds before you can actually skip it. If you spent 4 of those just kind of focusing on how to be ready to skip the ad, that is definitely also going to have an impact. The other one, the piece of research I showed before, is one that we did about half a year ago. We just completed another piece of research, this time working with Omnicon's clients, just to have like a second opinion, obviously because we kind of wanted to see if that was a fluke, and it showed the same kind of pattern. You can't compare the numbers directly, so for anyone who's kind of reading into the numbers on the charts here, it's measured in a different way because this actually only takes into account the short-term return on investment, but it still shows the same kind of pattern. It still shows the same kind of trend that even though addressable television is more expensive, and that's the challenge that we have in these kind of conversations with the media buyers, addressable television still delivers better return on investment. Part of the reason for this is, and this is a really bad slide to read up here, but I kind of took the liberty of highlighting a few of the good stuff. When you kind of looked into what does the different media platforms do really well against a control and an exposed group, what really stands out here, and those are the ones marked in green are the ones that are significant enough to kind of marry that green color, is that addressable television is better than any of the other ones in terms of building brand awareness, in terms of building message association, in terms of building basically anything an advertiser would like to have if they're trying to build a long-term understanding of that brand. And I think everybody here basically saw the presentation from Les Binet this morning, and this kind of plays into that really, really well. Another thing we looked into as part of this, and this is where it gets a bit more complicated, we applied a technology that was done called the emotional impact study. And that looks into, so how do people actually respond to this using a number of different technologies? So it uses eye tracking. That's the chart I showed you before with the YouTube example. It also uses things like, skin conductiveness. Whenever you see something that's going to give you a bit of arousal, you're going to have a small layer of sweat up here. It means that it conducts electricity, not fatal, but it conducts it a lot better. And obviously, by being able to measure that, you can understand if people actually get engaged with what they see, if they like it, if they, basically all feelings can kind of be deducted from that. If you make them laugh, if you make them cry, basically if you invoke any kind of feeling. And we also use facial recognition to try to understand, so, okay, what kind of feeling are we talking about here? Because what you don't want people to do is to be disgusted or be annoyed or anything else. That is also a feeling. But when we can kind of couple that with the facial expressions, we could tell if people are actually truly enjoying what they saw. And again, looking into, I just took some of the highlights from the presentation here, both in terms of using the eye tracking to figure out exactly, so when did people actually look at the ad? One thing that we very often hear as a feedback to television is that, well, yes, the ad is being shown, it's 30 seconds long, but people don't see the ad. People do anything but watch the ad. Actually, for the duration of these ads here, which is about, I think the average is about 26 seconds, out of those 26 seconds, for about 14 seconds, people were looking specifically at the piece of advertising. They weren't looking at their phones, they weren't looking at anyone else, they weren't leaving the room, they were sitting there looking at that piece of content. One thing that's also important to mention about this piece of research is we were able to do that in the comfort of everybody's own home. So all the measurements here are actually taking place in a real life environment. Also the way that we actually measure both Facebook and YouTube, that is YouTube advertising within the own news feed of that particular person, where we could put the ads in. So it wasn't done in a lab, it wasn't done in any kind of uncomfortable situation. It was done the way that you would usually consume these platforms anyway. Number of emotional reactions. Television and addressable television just blows the competition away. Television, because of the power of the visual, the audio, the big screen, the setting, is much, much better at getting people engaged with this. And it's much, much better at invoking any kind of emotion. And I think this is what advertisers really should pay attention to. And then obviously getting into the kind of finer details about, so do people actually like what they see? Using the facial expression to actually go in and see, are they annoyed by the ad, or do they have a positive response to the ad? When you look into this, again, it kind of also goes with the context of where you are seeing the ad. I wouldn't say the ads are probably not very different between the different platforms, but the context in which you see the ad is very, very different. Again, the majority of the consumption of our addressable TV platform takes place on a big TV screen. You're sitting in the comfort of your home, you're sitting in the living room, you've got time to spend, you're probably enjoying yourself, you might have some popcorn. As opposed to when you do check out advertising on Facebook or use Facebook, it's going to be on the move, you're going to be running late for a meeting. It's all the kind of situations where sometimes it's not the best time of the day to show a piece of advertising. And that's why you're going to see on Facebook that, well, there were some negative reactions to it. It might also be about technology. People are getting increasingly fed up with retargeting. They are getting increasingly fed up with the promise of digital advertising that can't really be delivered, and which often ends up pretty much annoying consumers more than actually does any good to anyone. So what we kind of learned from this, and just to summarize the findings, and we're talking about 3 different research studies here, so this was just taking the most important slides and presenting that to you, is, well, quality matters. Quality matters for the ad experience. Quality matters for the advertisers, because what you really want to have is a high completion rate. You also want to make sure that people see the ad. And this is really something that has to take into account whenever you start doing these kind of comparisons between different platforms. Why pay a lot less on a platform that doesn't deliver? It might be cheaper, but it's not going to be more effective. Addressable television also carries on the legacy of television. It's no big surprise, and a lot of you are probably going to say, no shit, Sherlock. But addressable television is really, really good branding. And this is also the way that we think it should be used. We have made some deliberate choices in terms of, even though some see this on a mobile phone or a tablet, we do not allow people to actually click on the advertising. That is a choice that we made, because what we don't want addressable television to turn into is a platform for the advertisers to kind of be too obsessed about these short-term metrics. So what's the click rate on my TV going to be? And should I do 5-second ads and make them all yellow and flashy and say, click here and win an iPad? We don't want that to happen, because television is better at something else, and I think truly one of the best platforms for building brands. So why should we try to be something else than that? We also see that obviously there's a very clear correlation between this view-through and this completion rate and return on investment. So the conversations that we are now pushing to advertisers and clients in particular is, when you try to compare on a CPM level, this is not really about the CPM of the advertising product that we're offering compared to the CPM rate of what's being offered by any other video platform out there. It is really about the effective CPM. I mean, look at the cost for a completed view. And if you want to have cheap clicks, if you want to have the ability to use data based on a like or share, well, that's fine, and you're going to use those platforms for something else. But if you really want to make sure that 30-second that you put your heart into, that's really about creating feelings and emotions, building the brand, building the equity, this is where you must invest in addressable television, because it's kind of true to the nature of television. So this is resonating really well in the market. Obviously, some of this is, again, things that we know or should know, but very often, well, we are talking to a new generation of media buyers. We're talking to people who haven't bought television. We're talking to people who only trade in trade disc. We're talking to people who are increasingly being measured based on the lowest CPM that they can negotiate or that they can find anywhere. Now we're bringing the conversation back to quality. We're bringing the conversation back to effectiveness. And I think this is where we should be. So thank you very much.